Welcome, Fight Family. Those of you who could join us today for another episode of the MMA Prospectus. I'm here, as always, with my co-host Tom Grant, coming back from another. We're basically like on every other week schedule right now, which is fine because the UFC is on like an every 3 week schedule. But it does feel it feels a little odd to only be doing one of these every now and then instead of all the time.
Yeah, I know, and also it's just weird in general that it doesn't feel like there's a UFC like not only every week but like every 3 days we had a run where it's like, oh my god, there's another UFC.
Yeah, I'm. This winter is going to be a little weird, especially December. It seems like the UFC is really trying to make sure that by the end of 2015 they have had their best calendar financial year possible.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the current way the UFC's been going has caused a lot of people to speculate that they're trying to sell. I think that's been something that people have said that it seems like Zuffa is kind of tired of the MMA game a little, but I don't know. I haven't heard anything that's completely confirmed they've been shopping the UFC, but it definitely feels like they are trying to make the product look pretty valuable right now.
It does feel that way. I mean, I'm sure it's one of those things that, like the sale of Strikeforce, people will, even people close into the promotion, if it happens, a lot of them won't know, like, up until they're reading it in the news.
Yeah,
That's just not the kind of thing that I think that they would want to really make public, frankly, if they
yeah,
were doing it.
yeah.
But
It would be interesting. It would make for an interesting day.
yeah, I mean, even fighters inside, like even I think it's James Krause talked about, is like, you look at what the UFC is doing with their product right now, and how they are adjusting every little tiny aspect to be perfect. Like all the backstage stuff, all the fighter apparel and drug testing, but even like smaller stuff than that. And like everybody has to be dressed right, and all these little like corporate touches. And so even fighters in the UFC are saying like that's the kind of shit you do when you're selling your business. Is like
Yeah,
you make sure that everything looks perfect, all the little shit that you normally wouldn't care about one event to the next. So anyway, that's not why we're here, because it's a non-UFC week. We have Bellator to talk about, World Series of Fighting, Titan FC, and then, we want to talk a bit about BJJ and MMA with a whole fresh new wave of top-tier BJJ talent on their way into the MMA ranks. And maybe even a couple other random bits and bobs, odds and ends here and there as well. So it's kind of a catch-all episode with no UFC event. We're picking and choosing what we want to look at today.
yeah. It's kind of a nice change of pace that we're not desperately trying to rehash a card from last week and then try to get through a card next week.
Yeah, it is nice. And with these 3 cards coming up, I mean, the World Series of Fighting one, Titan FC one, is a pretty prospect heavy, but this Bellator one, even though it has like 30 damn fights on it, frankly, it's just kind of like, yeah, there's a lot of guys where I have no idea. I
Yeah.
don't.
Oh, and do we mention Bama? I mean, Bama's going down this week too.
Oh, yeah, that's right. There's a Bama card. So we'll get a little flavor of each one as we go. Let's start with the Bellator one, just because that's kind of the big thing. That of all the cards going on this weekend, that is the most important. That's the most impressive name-wise. That's the one that's got all is getting all the media attention that would normally go to a UFC card.
Yeah. Well,
And
I was gonna say, and they're doing the whole one-night tournament thing, which
yes.
is, and it's a dynamite card, so it's kickboxing and MMA kind of interspersed together. But the one-night tournament makes it kind of interesting because you do have to approach your fighting differently for a one-night tournament than you would a one-off fight, and even you approach your training differently. So it's kind of a throwback event in a lot of ways that makes it kind of intriguing, even if some of the matchups aren't matchups you were dying to see.
Yeah, frankly, I'm actually like, okay, first of all, I don't really care about the whole, like, I love exciting fights, But frankly, from a standpoint of me being really interested in how fighters develop and watching the sport grow, I'm actually like I don't really put that much value. I don't put as much value in fighters being exciting as I put in them winning and finding interesting ways to win. And because of that, like I'm actually really interested in this tournament because it's got 4 top 15 level light heavyweights pretty much in the prime of their career. Newton's maybe the only one who isn't, and he's also among them one of the youngest. He and Phil Davis are the youngest 2 of the 4, but they're all basically in their prime. They're all top 15 guys, and they're getting together for one night tournament, which in modern MMA that does not happen.
No, it doesn't. And I mean, the sport went away from the one night tournament being the premier format for good reasons because the one night tournaments just got ravaged by injuries.
Yeah.
But it is different to bring it back. I'm not sure it's better, but it's definitely different.
Well, and I like the idea of how they're doing it, how they were able to like swing it through the commission and all that, which is basically, look, these guys are only fighting 5 rounds. That's it. You know, they fight a 2-round fight and then a 3-round fight. It's the same as if they were in a title fight. That's the most they're going to get out of the night. And shit, I don't know. It seems fun. I'm totally down for it. That said, okay, the really, weirdly, like I say, this card has 1 million people on it. But if you're looking for one serious prospect, now I'm willing to call him a prospect, even though he's champ, on that Bellator card. It's still got to be Liam McGeary. As a light heavyweight, at 32, 10 fights into his career with a belt around his waist. It's also a guy that's just 5 years into his career.
Yeah, McGeary is an interesting guy. I didn't really pay that much attention to him on his way up through Bellator because he kind of coincided with a real dip in interest just generally in Bellator.
Mm-hmm.
The UFC oversaturation strategy very much worked.
Yeah.
And I know that I definitely spend less time watching regional events or even Bellator events live than I used to. I used to watch them live. Now I will go through and pick specific fights to watch of guys I'm interested in. So McGeary kind of fell into a bit of a blind spot when I wasn't really doing this whole prospect thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then having gone back and taken a look at him, he's got a really interesting game. Really great at chaining submissions on the ground. I know he trains with the Renzo Gracie crew, who are like taking over both MMA and sport grappling right now. Like just the Renzo Gracie team is just absolutely packed with tough dudes from pretty much any way you can try to twist limbs. They have some guy who's doing it at a professional level. To me, what makes McGeary tick is that ground game. And then the problem is he's really not a great wrestler. No,
he's a terrible wrestler. He's an abominable wrestler, in fact.
All right, I was trying to be nice about it, but yeah, no, not a wrestler at all. And his striking is good enough, so that's a problematic skill set when you're an ace on the ground and have really no great way of getting it there.
He gets taken down. I mean, that's how he gets it there.
Yeah, like he gets touched and he falls over, and then it gets people to follow him to the mat. And Emmanuel Newton is the kind of dude that will just jump into that. He's fine with that. He will play whatever game you're willing to play.
He's also unsubmittable. The dude has no neck. I mean, that's why he was able to go 5 rounds with McGeary.
Newton is underrated on the mat. He's actually a pretty crafty grappler. And Tito Ortiz, like it's 2015 Tito Ortiz. I would be interested to see what happens with McGeary if he gets in there with, a higher level of guy who's playing like the really on point MMA metagame. I think he wouldn't do particularly well. But he's definitely a fun fighter, and he's training with the right crew to develop a game that will be functional down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this for him, like as much as his game, being a power striker, like he plays the advanced version of Jan Blachowicz' game, which is to say that he's actually aggressive and high output, where Blachowicz is really unaggressive and low output.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, like, being an aggressive grappler at light heavyweight, I mean, Anthony Perosh is like a win-loss light heavyweight in the UFC with a long career under his belt, having zero athletic ability whatsoever, just through dint of being like a crafty grappler.
Yeah. I mean, for a while, like Phil Davis was the only aggressive grappler in light heavyweight, and he got away from that. There are no aggressive grapplers at light heavyweight aside from Aguirre right now. So he does have that going for him.
Yeah, it's one of those things that he's such an unusual skill set for that division that I do wonder, like, even in the UFC without wrestling, if he could just really shock a bunch of people because he's doing something that nobody else that they're facing is going to do.
Yeah, I think it's also worth mentioning John Jones was a pretty darn aggressive grappler.
Like, John Jones is a great grappler.
But no. John Jones, like, yeah, he's kind of if you're naming anything at light heavyweight, pretty much he does it.
Yeah, and I mean he's less of a great grappler as he is such a like limbed freak and athletic specimen that he's really and creative, that he's really able to do a lot offensively. I mean, he still got caught in that armbar from Vitor off his back. And
yeah, I mean, if you watch Jones grapple and you heard it for a while from like guys who trained around him with the Jackson squad, like you'd hear Kenny Florian kind of like really try to be politic and how he talked about Jones' game off his back, because he basically said it was non-existent, but you know, you got to put him there, sort of thing. But yeah, no, Jones, it's athleticism, it's aggressiveness, and then it's having an excellent ability to integrate strikes with his grappling. If you just started him on his knees with no strikes with a lot of MMA fighters, I don't think Jones would do particularly well. But since you're starting him on the feet and he's allowed to hit the other guy, he becomes an elite level fighter, an elite level grappler, as long as there are strikes involved.
Yeah, but I do wonder, especially, like, I'll be interested to see where McGeary is 3 years from now, when he's like right in the middle of his prime and 35, if he's still with Bellator or if he's made the jump to the UFC, and how well he does there. Because this is somebody who, like I say, I think, you know, he's got 4 or 5 more good years out in front of him to be a top-level light heavyweight. And so it's interesting to look at him right now, you know, with a belt in Bellator and say, well, you know, how much more does he go? Or how much further does he go? Does he stay the big fish in the small pond, or does he come over to the UFC side of things, where it's not that much bigger of a pond, frankly?
Yeah. I think former co-host Patrick Wyman just put out on Bleacher Report he just published today, I believe, an article about how basically if they don't start finding like light heavyweight and heavyweight prospects, those divisions could be pretty much dead in a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, the UFC is finally started paying some attention to light heavyweight. You know, getting guys like Serkinov really, honestly, a lot further into his career than he needed to be, and getting Abdul Karim Edilov also further along in his career than he probably needed to be, although Edilov is very young still. And
we found, I mean, there's a couple good light heavyweights out there in Europe, and it's really, I think, part of it is probably visas, especially with the Russian fighters.
Part of it's visas. I think, I mean, it speaks to a level of integration and dedication to the search that the UFC, I don't know that they are interested in that. You know, it's actual scouting rather than just looking at somebody's record and hearing how good they are from their coaches. Or, I mean, a lot of times, like, basically a lot of how guys get to the UFC are through their gyms. If it's a big gym that's well connected to the UFC is a lot more liberal about, like, oh, hey, we got this new prospect from Team Alpha Male. It's through specific managers. You hear about, you know, there are managers that have great connections to the UFC. And like, I know, like Tim Leidecker in Europe, all the good European, like Northern European fighters seem to end up going through him before they get to the UFC. They're managers who are expert at tracking these guys down, or it's like regional MMA champs or vets. You win a title in RFA, you win a title in Legacy, you win a title in Tachi, you win a title in Jungle Fight, the UFC will come and get you.
Yeah.
And that's not scouting. Like, that's having a lot of good channels to bring talent in. It's having a lot of set avenues to bring guys into the fold. But light heavyweight and heavyweight, they need actual scouting. They need people who are out there sifting through all the guys with pro records out there saying, can we do something with this guy? And if we sign this fighter, can we get him to a bigger camp? Can we get him more training? Can we get him some sponsorship so that he can live month to month for a year and train better to be a better talent? Like, they actually have to go out and try and at some point figure out, how do we attract big, powerful athletes to this sport in a way that makes the top end divisions more sustainable.
Yeah, and I think that goes with something that a while ago people wanted the UFC to kind of set up their own minor league, and to a certain extent they've set up a lower tier of the UFC within the UFC. But a system of support, like just giving MMA more of an infrastructure, I don't think that's fair of me to ask of the UFC, because that's not their job. But the sport very much needs that from somewhere if it's going to continue to grow.
Yeah, I mean, the only place you really see a heavy investment on MMA infrastructure is Russia, frankly.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's either state sponsored, and really in the US it's the infrastructure that we have in place is from the big gyms.
Yep.
The big gyms create their own infrastructure for themselves. And that's probably how it's going to be in the US. That's kind of how I see, is that the gyms are going to, because we had ATT in, they set up their own area. They kind of get they get fighters places to live. They bring them in.
Yep.
They set up their own regional promotions, and kind of get guys fights in the area, and kind of foster regional, very micro level MMA, like regional MMA. And I think that's what it's going to be in the US. I think that's how it's going to get set up, and it's going to take time, and it's not going to be, not that Russia is going to be not corrupt and not favor certain people, but ours is guaranteed to be the same way.
Oh yeah. I mean, you see, and there'll always be the lack of infrastructure in the US is, it results in gyms and camps really trying to game the system. Like what we've seen with Millennia MMA running all their guys through Gladiator Challenge and Explode.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get these guys one good solid call up on one solid regional promotion. They'll get one Tachi Palace, one RFA, one Legacy fight, and then they're in the UFC for a short notice fight. And that's a racket. That's how that is US gym infrastructure of how you get develop a fighter to get to the UFC.
Yeah.
It's a response to the lack of infrastructure. So anyway, I don't even know how we got off on this tangent.
If there's a week for us to get on random tangents like that, I suppose this is it.
Yeah, we're talking about.
It appears that we're not doing the show nude. Is that the decision?
You know what? I strongly considered it. I can get naked right now if we need to, but I think it's too late now. I think we shouldn't throw a thematic change to the show right in the middle of it. We need to
next show.
Press releases.
Okay.
It's not really a prospect, but I just want to talk a little bit about Carlos Eduardo Rocha, just because I don't know. He was a fighter I was really interested in for a while when he came to the UFC. I spent some time looking. He had a great story. I think he was orphaned on a beach as a kid and grew up literally in his jiu-jitsu school on the mats, living on the mats. Moved to Germany, started coaching over there, had some really great quick success running through the German scene, got to the UFC, and then fought Jake Ellenberger, Mike Pierce, and was gone. And Took one fight regionally since then and lost that too. So he's now on a 3-fight skid, but he's back with Bellator, and I'm interested to see what he can do out of that.
He was a really fun fighter. I remember really enjoying his game. I'm trying to remember who it was. He hit a sick Kimura reversal. I think that was on Ellenberger when he got.
Yeah, he was on Ellenberger.
He rolled Ellenberger with a Kimura. He came up with an awesome knee bar against oh god, what was the name? McRae. Oh man, I'd forgotten about Chris McRae. Like he was a fun fighter he seemed very much like it was 2010, 2011 where the UFC really didn't know how to handle a prospect. And I was like, oh, this guy knee barred Chris McRae. Let's give him Jake Ellenberger and Mike Pierce. Oh, he lost decisions to both those guys? Yeah, we're cutting him.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who's 3 years into his career as a pro fighting Jake Ellenberger. 2.5 years fighting Jake Ellenberger, who at the time, this is in 2011, Jake Ellenberger was right hitting his prime 6 years into his career. And that's when he was on that's when he went on a 6-fight win streak, beating Diego Sanchez, Jake Shields, John Howard, and Mike Pyle.
And Mike Pierce was coming off of like a fight that he should have won against Josh Koscheck.
Yeah.
And so having gone the distance with Johnny Hendricks.
Yeah, I mean that's also like basically, getting into the, maybe not quite prime in Mike Pierce's career, but certainly, I mean, Pierce, interesting, he's only been fighting since 2007.
Yeah.
It's, you're still talking about two very good, strong, tough fighters, especially for a grappler to fight.
Yeah. So early in his career, and it was definitely that is like a case that's a case in point of a guy that like just man, the UFC didn't know what to do with him.
Yep.
They got excited, they tossed him into the wolves, and when he didn't do anything, they just cut him loose because this was 2012 and that was how it happened. It was still the UFC. If you lost 2 fights in a row, you're pretty much. I mean, do you remember that when it was like if you lost 2 or 3 fights in a row, you were cut. That was it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was absolutely basically you go 0-2, you're gone, no question, or even 1-2. You know.
Well, there were times when people were like, "Oh man, like this dude just fought for the title and then lost his rebound fight. Is the UFC gonna cut him?
Yeah,
he lost 2 fights in a row, like." And that was not a joke discussion all the time. That was an actual serious consideration.
The other name somebody cued me in on, because I totally was flying under my radar, was Adam Piccolotti, who's fighting on the undercard of this Bellator show. Came up through Dragon House, has already fought for Bellator once now. And we might as well just kick off the discussion here overall, just because he's a BJJ guy, and that's part of one of the things we wanted to look at today. This sort of new wave of BJJ grapplers entering MMA. And Piccolotti, he's not a top-end grappler, but he's a fun-looking fighter.
Yeah, Piccolotti's a good grappler. Collected a couple medals at brown belt at major competitions, has competed at Gracie World, which the Gracie Worlds competition is generally not the highest level of competition, but it is the highest level of submission only tournament that is held out there. There's no time limit. There's no anything. You just grapple until you submit the other dude. And that's the highest level of that particular format in a tournament setting. Obviously, we have Metamoris and Polaris and all these other submission only like one events. But so Piccolini does a lot of that. He's part of that, and a lot of fun to watch, a fun grappler. I've heard his name thrown out a bunch as like a pretty good American black belt who's doing MMA. But it really seems like there's a new generation of jiu-jitsu guys who are coming to MMA when we kind of had a generation skip MMA. Like we had Jacare and Damian Maia and Fabricio Boom come in and all those guys. And then kind of the in-between generation of like Marcelo Garcia and Zanji Ribeiro and a bunch of those other guys like Cobrinha. Some of them took a look at MMA. Marcelo tried MMA out.
Hodger Gracie gave it a run.
Hodger Gracie gave it a go. Zanji Ribeiro actually has 2 MMA wins under his belt, both by knockout. But I've heard from Zanji, and I can't confirm this story, but basically he had a front row seat to his brother Solo getting his head drummed against the floor in an MMA match, and was just basically like, I'm never doing this again.
Mm.
And Marcelo Garcia went to South Korea, took a guy's back, was winning the fight, and then got hit once and had a cut open up and lost via cut, and basically was like, well, screw this. Like, if that loses me a match, like, then I'm done with this. But we have a new generation of guys who are apparently giving MMA a pretty good look, and guys who are confirmed coming to MMA, like, is Hidolfo Rivera, who just won the ADCCs. And if I remember correctly, he's also the 2013 ADCC champion. Let me just check that really quick. But Hidolfo is an absolute monster of a jiu-jitsu grappler. Nasty takedowns, and then just horrendous top pressure. Let me check the ADCC championship. But he would be most likely fighting at heavyweight or light heavyweight, which also would help his chances in MMA. And I can't speak to, I'm not going to this isn't the situation where I give like a firm prediction on the guy because I haven't seen him fight MMA yet. I have no idea how this man reacts to getting hit. But as a grappler, is a great athlete and plays just a wicked top game. And did you see any of his match with Ben Henderson at the most recent ADCCs?
I did not.
So, I mean, you're essentially talking about a guy who's like 215 pounds going against Ben Henderson, who probably came in weighing somewhere in, I don't remember how much Ben weighed in the match, but he was definitely in one of the lighter weight divisions. So there's
185, 190 maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a weight difference there. And Vieira took him down, just smashed past his guard, and then Ben Henderson gave up his back, and Hidolfo triangled him from the back. And it was basically Ben Henderson had essentially no offense in the match. So that, I mean, and he's won multiple time world championships. We're talking about a guy who I think probably could be something close to a Jacare-like athletic talent coming to MMA. So to see how he does in the striking and how committed he is to MMA would be interesting. The one that got me thinking about this topic, oh, by the way, 2011, looks like he was 2011 semifinalist. So he medaled in 2011, won in 2015, and yeah, the medals don't actually matter.
No.
No.
He's good.
The guy who I think got me thinking about this was Buchecha declaring that it's not surprising because, okay, so Buchecha is a jiu-jitsu practitioner, Marcus Almeida, who kind of took the world by storm. He was the star of Metamoris 1, who had the amazing match with Roger Gracie and almost broke Roger Gracie's arm in an arm bar, and has won several world championships. And at the last world championships, he got his knee shredded. He hurt it in a match, and then later that match, the guy went back to it for a sweep, and his knee buckled even worse. And at that point, when he left, a lot of people were just like, man, that's probably the last time Buchecha grapples for free, because he just got his knee destroyed grappling for free. That's probably the last time he's going to do that. And Buchecha has come out and said that when his knee heals, he's going to start working on his boxing and working on his wrestling and look to make the transition to MMA. And he already trains at AKA, because that's where Checkmat's based out of. He is a almost daily rolling partner of Daniel Cormier and has been rolling with strikes for quite some time now, to my understanding. So both Hidolfo and Buchecha are really excellent athletes, and also I believe 25 or under. So we're getting really prime grapplers coming to MMA for the first time in a while. I mean, like, Benel Dariush would kind of fall into that category, but he never really competed at the black belt level. Mm-hmm. But to me, this is a really interesting it's a really interesting time to see two of the jiu-jitsu's top guys basically say no to the professional grappling side and jump to MMA.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice as a fan to see, like, that isn't a cycle that has just, the MMA has totally, I don't know, I don't want to say abandoned MMA, but it's nice to see that, like, there's still a lot of that interest in MMA from the rest of the combat sports world. Like I think it's really valuable over the years that gets maintained. Like those are relationships that, and I don't know, I want to say the UFC needs to, but the MMA in general needs to continue to foster.
Yeah. I mean, if we, the part of it too, or part of it that I'm looking forward to is, I mean, we thought professional grappling was going to be a thing, and it probably still is going to be. Professional grappling is a thing at this point, but it's not as perfect an outlet as we need it to be, as they need to be yet. Metamoris is having problems paying people. I mean, like, it's not a secret that that Metamoris is paying guys months after their matches, sometimes not at all. And you hear guys complaining about their pay. I believe the last round of Metamoris guys, like Joe Lozon and all those guys, just got paid before the last event went off. So for a lot of guys are kind of backing away from Metamoris. Polaris is doing really well. They just had their amazing second event, but they're only going to be holding a few events a year. And other than that, you're looking at not huge cash prizes for winning tournaments.
Yeah.
And so basically you're not guaranteed money going in. So I'm not shocked that these guys are coming over. And I think they're going to do fairly well in the game as long as they stay dedicated. We've heard the discussion a lot that, oh, these sport jiu-jitsu guys aren't going to do well in MMA, and yet we're provided with examples of them doing just fine. Jacare Werdum, Gilbert Burns, all these guys. It's not them, the fact that they're learning lapel guards and that they're berimboloing and inverting, that is making it hard to transition over to MMA. It's again, jiu-jitsu utterly lacks infrastructure and doesn't develop athletes.
Yeah.
It doesn't develop athletes. You need to develop yourself as an athlete in jiu-jitsu. The actual sport itself will not develop you in that sense. And so when you get a great athlete that does jiu-jitsu, they do very well. And then they can come over to MMA and they can do really well there as well. And I think Ryan Hall on Tough is kind of demonstrating that you can do the stuff that people are like, oh, you can't invert, go 50-50 and heel hook a dude in MMA. It's like, yeah, you can. If you're really good at it, you can. And there's a limit to how many guys Ryan Hall is going to be able to do that to, because he's not a fantastic athlete. But he is good enough at it to do it to professional fighters.
Well, and I mean, we've seen this over the years, especially like if you are really an excellent specialist, if you are really like a top-notch specialist, you will probably win 80 to 85% of the time. You know?
Yeah.
If you're, I mean, I don't know. Let's see. Always my favorite one to bring up. If you are, and he's almost 40 now, so he's, this is still, if you are Masakazu Imanari, and you are 40 years, going on 40 years old, you're still 32-14.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that's the guy I forgot about. Gary Tonin is thinking about making the jump to MMA, and he just shredded Imanari's knee at Polaris. That was to me the most impressive match of Polaris, if people haven't caught it, in that Gary Tonin went right into playing heel hook with Imanari and had Imanari on the defensive the entire time, and then just heel hooked the shit out of him.
If anybody deserves it, I mean, there's Paul Harris, and then Imanari's not far behind that.
Oh, yeah, it was one of those that I usually have like a little bit of, like, Imanari's a great, like, supposedly a really nice guy when you meet him. And no hate, but man, like, if there's one dude that deserved to get heel hooked really hard just once in his life, it's Imanari. And yeah, as you said, Paul Harris would be the other dude.
Like, those are guys that have reputations for absolutely destroying knees and putting guys out of commission for a long time.
Yeah.
But
so Gary Tonin's thinking about coming over to MMA, which would be interesting. He's over there. I mean, like, his game right now doesn't look like an MMA game necessarily. He's one of those guys that is super willing to just, oh yeah, I'll roll back down to I will sweep you from half guard. Oh, I didn't get the submission I wanted during the sweep. Okay, I'll roll back to half guard and hit the same sweep again, looking for it. That said, Ryan Hall is the kind of dude that I didn't think, like, if you just looked at his MMA, his grappling game, you wouldn't think he'd transition mode MMA. I mean, Tonan's in there he's training under John Danaher. He's in there with the Renzo Gracie guys. He's rolling with like top-notch MMA dudes all the time over at Renzo. So if he commits 100% over to MMA, I think he could do pretty well in MMA as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you even look at somebody, like I say, I mean, especially if you're a good athlete. Like if you're a good athlete and you're a specialist, you're gonna win in this sport. You're not gonna do terrible. You may not ever be champ, but if you're just an excellent kickboxer, just an excellent striker, just an excellent wrestler, just an excellent grappler, and you stay at it, you are going to win more often than you lose because you're going to fight a lot of guys who are just sort of skilled generalists. They don't wrestle enough well enough to take you down or box you up or submit you, and they are then stuck playing your game with you. And that's going to be the majority of the fighters you face,
Yeah. And Tono would be, man, because he got Imanari. He also is heel hooked Martin Held at the first Polaris. So, like, he's collecting MMA heel hook specialists at this point. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he took a match with Paul Harris just to see if he could go for the trifecta.
That would be fun. I'd love to see Paul Harris do some pro grappling circuit stuff, just because I mean, I don't know. I still have a soft spot for Paul Harris. I'm not gonna lie.
I love everything about his game until his opponent taps.
Yeah, pretty much. He's such a divisive figure, but I mean, shit, it's cage fighting, and this sport needs people not as like we don't need to idolize him. I don't necessarily want him to be hugely successful, but we need some of those shadowy figures off in the corner that everybody's just like, fuck fighting that guy. Yeah. I do not want anything.
And as someone who grapples, I appreciate a guy who gets in there and is aggressively looking to finish submissions. And like, I don't know anyone who does that better than Pars. He just needs to stop aggressively finishing them after the fight's over.
Yeah. No, not going to defend him, but I just throwing that out there. So
it's one of those things that I kind of have to say because I feel both ways about it. Like, I love watching him grapple, and I also hate watching him grapple.
Yeah, it's very much both at the same time. So let's drop over to this World Series of Fighting card real quick here. Take a look at that. There are several guys on here that are really worth noting. I mean, obviously, there's the champ, Justin Gaethje, he's much younger than Liam McGeary, but he's also kind of in that Liam McGeary position where, he's already champ. He's already somebody people know. He's already got a great streak of wins under his belt, and he's only been fighting for 4 years,
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. It's going to be interesting to see what he does, though. The World Series of Fighting situation is just weird Yeah, it's just like the whole thing is just a weird situation because we were talking about like, do you remember like at the turn of this year we were thinking that World Series of Fighting might be dead?
Yeah,
it's just limped on.
Well, I think they're getting a lot better. Like seems like they've recently had a big clearing house internally. Mm-hmm. They brought in Chael Sonnen, got rid of Boss Rutan, and I love Boss, but he was terrible on those World Series of Fighting cards.
I mean, he is again like. Boss is like the MMA crazy uncle who like you both love and hate. He's terrible on the mic. I mean, like he's entertaining, but he doesn't know anything about the fighters. He doesn't. Well, the thing
he was awesome during Pride. Since then, it's been nostalgia, and that's it. During Pride, he was great. After that, when he really just obviously stepped away from the insider part of the game. And like really actually like, knowing guys and doing all the pre-fight interviews and reading up and watching tape and all that, then he's just totally useless.
Yeah.
So getting Sonnen in, who I think is still very obviously very in touch on the gym side, knows who guys are, knows how they fight, knows what they're doing. I think that's great. and they've replaced a lot of people, and they've just become. I mean, the thing is that they no longer distinguish themselves as being a bastion of high-level talent that isn't in the UFC.
Yep.
Which they were for a very short time, and it almost ruined them.
It's tough to do. I mean, like, just talking about the promotions that we're talking about today, we're not talking about Resurrection Fighting, because look at who's headlining.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't it Keith Jardine? It's Jardine. It's not Keith Jardine. It's who's the other one? Is it Brock Jardine?
Is it? I'm not even paying attention to Resurrection Fighting right now.
Yeah. I was because they occasionally have a good prospect here and there.
Oh yeah, they get good guys. It's an avenue to the UFC, but
yeah, it's Brock Jardine and Anthony Smith is their headline. Like, you know, they're at that point, people aren't talking about you necessarily. You're very much like a regional show at that point.
Yeah, and Justin Gaethje, Luis Palomino, like, it's not bad, but it's not the kind of thing that's going to make. It's not Andrei Arlovsky, Anthony Johnson. Like, that was a high point in terms of like talent in the ring. The World Series of Fighting is just not going to get back.
Yeah.
But what they have done is they have become a really they have shown themselves to be really excellent at scouting and bringing along high-end talent or high-end prospects. That's what World Series of Fighting is still really good at.
Yeah, they find good talent. And who are we going to talk about on this one?
Well, we have Timur Valiev, who's fighting out of Jackson Wink, and you know, he's another. I don't know if he's Dagestani or not. I feel like
I believe. Oh, let me check. But he was one of my guys when I was taking it. He finished in the top 5 for my bantamweight prospects. Although he is really close to like not being considered a prospect in our 6th year. I think he might have crossed that line. He crossed the line.
He is Dagestani.
Yeah, he's out of Dag Fighter originally. But he crossed the line. But whatever, like, you know, like 2 weeks ago of like 6 years in his career, but still really well-rounded game. Like, he's entering the prime of his career right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I like him a lot in terms of as a fighter. He's a good pressure striker, and he mixes together a lot of diversity in his offense. And he's a good counter wrestler. And then if you get him down, you're actually dealing with a pretty darn good ground game. So just overall, he's a pretty entertaining and good young fighter who I think is going to be very good for their bantamweight division.
Yeah, and then we also, you know, maybe not a prospect, but Vagabov, who, I mean, if you really look at it, like, yeah, he had a couple of fights in 2006 and all that, but he really only started his career in earnest in 2009. So he's a fighter who's like just now getting into his prime as well, coming over to World Series of Fighting out of Dagestan, crazy as all get out, pathologically aggressive. I'm really looking forward to his stateside debut. He's got not a can, but he's got a tough regional journeyman that he is just going to totally crush in front of him.
He's is this the guy that like? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This is the guy who got like crazy post-fight antics in Russia because the dude can't turn it off.
Yep.
Pathologically aggressive is not hyperbole in this case.
No.
He is probably mentally unstable.
Yeah, but he's a shitload of fun. I mean, and like I said, these are guys, Valiev, Vagabov, like, these are good, solid, you know, fighters out of Dagestan that you want to see in bigger organizations. These are quality prospects. Yeah. You know, quality fighters on the way up. And they have also got LaRue Burley and Ben Fodor, both. Fodor, Phoenix Jones, obviously more hyped for his superhero career than his in the cage career, but
we all have our calling.
And he's got a long amateur history, you know, beat some good guys in the Northwest fight scene. Cody McKenzie, when McKenzie was actually like training and coming up.
Oh, Cody McKenzie.
I know. And he's, you know, now like really only in 2013 has he started a serious MMA career. So he's really just kind of getting going
Yeah.
now. And then LaRue Burley, who walked into Bellator as a setup fight for Bubba Jenkins and beat him.
Yeah. Yeah. Man.
And he fought out his Bellator contract, 3 fights, fought once for RFA. Now he's fighting for World Series of Fighting. I get the feeling he's fighting Brian Foster, which is a hell of a fucking tough fight. Foster is really good. And I have a feeling he's one of those guys where he's now trying to, like, 1-2 fight contracts here and there to get to the UFC. And if he beats Brian Foster, I don't know why. You know, the UFC's got to be looking at him as quickly as possible because he's got the athletic ability. It's just trying to get all the rest of the skills behind it.
Yeah. Yeah, Burley's an interesting one because he's been on the periphery because he got that Bubba Jenkins win, and then it didn't really feel like Bellator wanted to give him the push.
No, I mean Bubba. They're still much more invested in Bubba Jenkins than they were in him.
So it's going to be interesting to see now that he's on the main card here. So World Series of Fighting is interested in giving him some shine, and I'm going to look forward to that. I'm hopefully going to be able to catch this particular card.
And they've got Krasmir Mladenov, who he's not an exciting fighter, but he's another one of those guys that, like, you know, like I say, it feels like World Series of Fighting actually scouts. Like, it feels like they actually go out and find random guys to pick up that are better than people think they are. They find value for money. And he's an undefeated, you know, high-level quality wrestler out of Bulgaria, I believe, who's undefeated to date. I mean, he's kind of a blanket, but he's getting to the point that he should be a fully developed blanket. But he's still, like, you know, he's a tough, good level UFC fighter, good high level fighter. I'm interested in seeing him fight Clifford Starks because it's kind of going to be, you know, best wrestler wins.
Yeah,
hopefully.
Man.
Those are just some of the guys I want to talk about on World Series of Fighting. Over on Titan FC as well, there are let's see. Yeah, I'm on the wrong Titan FC card. Titan FC, I need their newest one, 35. Headlined by Pat Healy, Rick Hahn. Big fight I'm looking for on here is Andre Harrison, Des Green.
Mm-hmm.
We scouted Harrison as part of our bantamweight scouting report, one of our 145ers. Really just like one of those guys who it seems like once he's in the clinch or in a wrestling exchange is just stupid strong. Like, not the fastest dude in the world, but really powerful. Beat Kurt Hollabaugh, beat Cody Bollinger, is fighting out of Belmore Kickboxing Academy, 10-0, and started in 2011. Seems like he's on a real push to get to the UFC. Really good fighter.
Yeah, no, he's another one that's going to be fun to watch just because, as you said, like, he's just so freaking strong in the clinch.
Mm-hmm.
And featherweight was so stacked that it was hard to fit guys like that in. Yeah.
He's one of those guys that seems like he's got all the tools. It's just, the thing with him has just been output. But, you know, he's getting good high-level wins, and he's got Des Green in front of him who hasn't been fighting has actually been fighting for less time. Green started in 2012, and he almost went, like, Bellator almost – he was kind of a victim of Bellator's tournament structure and its tendency to just push guys into really high-level fights really early. Like, oh, you did well in the tournament? You know, you beat Angelo Sanchez, Mike Richmond, and Will Martinez Jr. Now fight Daniel Weichel, former M1 champ. And he lost that fight, and then suddenly he's out of Bellator over in Titan. You know?
Yeah. I remember my things with Harrison being that while he's really, really strong, he's really low output at times. And he actually can get outworked in the clinch because his technical game is improving there, but like he relies a lot on that power, and he can actually get bullied on the inside a bit by guys who know what they're doing. So it'll be interesting to see what he does against a guy like Desmond Green, who's, if I'm remembering correctly, Desmond Green's a pretty high motor fighter.
Yeah, Desmond Green is pretty high motor. But the thing is, I mean, he fights at a TriStar. The thing is that Green, like almost typical to that TriStar thing, he's kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
And that could be something that really, like I say, he's got a loss to Kurt Hollabaugh, who Andre Harrison turned around and beat.
Mm-hmm.
So not to MMA math it there, but Harrison, for the problems we've seen in Harrison, he's not losing any fights.
Yeah.
This is one of those things, like if he beats Green, especially, even though he's already beat Hollabaugh, it will mean that like there's no reason that he shouldn't be in the UFC right now if he beats Des Green. And that tabs him in my book as like a fighter who will almost certainly be top 10 in his division at some point in the future.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Tim Elliott's on the card, although he's not really a prospect anymore at this point.
Mm-hmm. You know where I want to go, Zane?
Where?
I want to go to Bama.
Bama, okay, yeah. There's nothing too much else on this Titan FC card. There are other good fighters, but no reason to keep us from the Bama goodness.
Yeah.
And you take it away, Tom.
Well, I mean, main event, Tom Duquesnoy is getting back in the cage. From the sounds of it, from what I have heard, and I think, Zane, you've heard this also, is that he actively did not want a UFC contract after his last win.
Yeah.
He felt he wanted more time to get ready for the UFC, even though he's now living and training in Albuquerque at Jackson Winklejohn. A good fit for him. I don't love it for his striking necessarily. I think the problems with Winklejohn style kickboxing are well documented by many people, notably Connor Rebush and Patrick Wyman on heavy hands. But overall, I think it's a great place for Duquesnoy to learn kind of the ins and outs of the North American kind of style of MMA, which is pretty much the dominant style when you're coming in, like the rule set you're competing in and all that. I think we've talked a lot about Duquesnoy on the show, so everyone knows that he's just an amazeballs fighter at this point. Like, ridiculous athlete, really well-rounded, and probably has a title belt in his future, like a major title belt. He's already Bama featherweight champion. He's probably going to end up being a UFC champion of some type in his career if all things hit for him. He actually had a pretty tough fight in his last fight. He got out-wrestled a little bit in the first round, though he managed every fight. He does at least one incredibly athletic thing in an incredibly casual manner, like it's totally normal. And in that fight, he got taken off his feet by a blast double, and in midair, dug a whizzer and just wrenched on it so hard, he actually had an angle before he hit the ground, which is one of the sillier, more athletic things I've ever seen. And then he ended up breaking the cardio of a Polish grinder. Just absolutely broke. I'm forgetting who he was fighting, but he
Krzysztof Klosek.
Yeah, he broke Krzysztof's cardio and just beat him up after the first round ended. Wore him down in the second round, and then once Krzysztof was exhausted in the third round, finished him off with some nasty strikes. Duquesnoy's getting back in there. Pretty much every fight at this point in Bama could be his last fight in Bama before he jumps over to the UFC. The UFC is very much aware of this kid, from everything I've heard. They want him. He wants to be there. So it's only a matter of time. So I'm really excited to see him fighting again.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too. I mean, he's a great fighter, and yeah, I agree. I think as far as he at some point will be at the very least, I expect him to be a top 5 shoe-in in the UFC at some point. Somebody who will be either get the title shot or compete for be like a top contender. Injury away from a title shot kind of thing. He's absolutely phenomenal. Also on that card, worth noting, I just glanced at it. I hadn't even really taken a good look. Carl Moore's on there.
Yep.
So I'm excited to see him. One of the better Irish fighters outside the UFC. Good light heavyweight, real technical Muay Thai game, consistent high output striker, which is kind of rare at light heavyweight.
With the blitz on Ireland, you would kind of hope the UFC would swoop him up sooner or later.
Yeah, I do think he'd probably end up having to be at middleweight if he got to the UFC, but
yeah.
Either way, I mean, their middleweight division is frankly shrinking too. So even if they didn't, even if he had to cut down, they could use him at middleweight right now.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say, Duquesnoy's opponent. How do you say his name?
Brendan Loughnane, I think.
Yeah. Had a cup of coffee in the UFC.
Yeah.
Lost a decision to who was it? Mike Wilkinson.
Yep.
Yeah.
Who knocked out recently released Swedish prospect
Nicholas Backstrom. Yeah, no, not a bad. I mean, if you're talking about your one fight in the UFC where you lost a decision, you could do a lot worse than Wilkinson. So
yeah,
tough, like not a cupcake of a fight for Duquesnoy.
No. I mean, Loughnane's, he's another one of those fighters that gets to the UFC 2 years into his career, loses once, he went through tough, lost his tough fight, gets cut, and he's only just now 5 years into his career, 6 years maybe, and he's a top level regional MMA fighter who could easily get back to the UFC at any time if they need somebody.
Yeah.
So, it's a great fight for Duquesnoy. It's a great, next test for him. And, hopefully, I hope he's just playing the smart game, which is to play the Conor McGregor game and come in 6 or 7 years into your career and just say, okay, I'm ready, pay me. Pay me and I will kick ass.
Yep.
That is at this point, I mean, I think, fighters have to start looking at, you can't, and it kind of sucks because I've talked to some guys who really want to get to the UFC who are working for it, and they'll say things like, I just want that one shot, I just want one fight there, and and after that I can really prove myself and make my way there. And it's just not that organization anymore. Like it seems more and more from the outside, at least, that like, if you're getting to the UFC, you have to be thinking, like, how do I build a career here? Like, how do I make money and stay around and get 5 years out of this, a really successful 5 years? Because otherwise, it's just not going to be worth that much. If you go in and you put on, like, even one good fight, and then you put on a couple bad fights, and you're just slogging down at the bottom of some Fight Pass card, and you're not making the money you thought you'd be, and you're not, it's just not going anywhere, then is that really the dream?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is a real question, like, because it's very much becoming like other professional sports. Like, getting to the league is only the first step. Then you need to make your career.
Exactly. It's like, you hear about guys who get drafted into pro baseball teams out of high school, and then they're playing minor league ball for 4 or 5 years, and it's not, they never actually get to play in the league, even though their contract is held by a team.
Yeah,
it is becoming more and more like a big pro sport in that way, that the goal just can't be, I need to get there anymore, because there are 550 fighters there. A lot of guys get there.
Mm-hmm.
Most guys who stick around in the MMA world long enough and win are going to get there, it seems like. So, anyway, let's see. Do we have anything else? I think that kind of covers.
Do you want to do our little introduce our little prospect spotlight idea?
Oh, yes, we have a prospect to spotlight, just because I'm a fuckwit and have fallen way off the bandwagon on the actual scouting report because I got a lot of shit to do. And we are talking about Julio Arce, right?
Yep. So, we kind of figured the scouting reports kind of stalled a little bit. Both of us kind of have had things come up in our lives that make the scouting and compilation of a list like that very difficult.
Yeah.
So we've decided that we're going to use the show and maybe not every week, but try to highlight a prospect that is worth your time who's not in the UFC. And we're starting off with Julio Arce because he was my personal #1 bantamweight when I finished scouting out that division. I believe Patrick Wyman, when he made his list of prospects in all of MMA earlier this year, listed him as the 10th best prospect in all of MMA. He is fighting out of Tiger Schulman, and he fights in Ring of Combat right now. And he is a very, very technical boxer. Did you get a chance to watch some of his tape, Zane?
Yeah, I did. I did. I did watch film on him and get a good look at him, and he looks phenomenal. And really great athlete, great technical striker. And I gotta say, first off, one of the things that really came to mind with me, seeing immediately that he's out of Tiger Schulman, is just how because I think Tiger Schulman, they got, and they have been at times, derided a little because they're kind of like a McDojo. That was the classic Tiger Schulman label.
Yeah, they kind of got labeled as being the a karate belt factory sort of place, if I'm remembering correctly.
And I don't know how, I'm not going to speak to whether or not that's accurate or not in terms of a criticism of their general structure. But one of the things that has become absolutely abundant to me is that they are fantastic at getting guys really solid fundamental foundations of skill bases. Getting guys, they may not be able to take a guy to a title, but taking guys and from nothing and molding them into UFC caliber talent.
Yep.
You look at Lyman Good, Jimmy Rivera, Uriah Hall, Luis Gaudino, now Julio Arce, Shane Burgos.
Yeah, I was gonna say they got another guy on the Ring of Combat circuit too, who's similar game to Julio Arce, just a little less polished.
Shane Burgos, right?
Yeah.
We would have highlighted as a top prospect at 145, except he's had some spinal surgery and some stuff like that make it, his whole MMA career is just kind of a miracle, frankly.
Yeah.
But it speaks to me to the value of, and maybe it's one of the things we talk about with this idea of Duquesnoy moving over to Jackson Wink, and I'm actually not that worried about it because Duquesnoy has a pretty good style already in place.
Yeah, that's true.
At that point, Jackson Winklejohn seems like the kind of place it's we can just give him a really professional camp, get him, make sure he's fit, make sure he's ready, enhance his grappling, enhance his wrestling. He can take care of his striking, and they'll do a good job. I don't worry about them coaching him, frankly.
That's a fair point.
But it's I don't necessarily want to see a fighter raised up out of Jackson Winklejohn. Whereas on the flip side, you look at what Tiger Schulman produces, and maybe I want to see these guys go over to some of the big camps where they can really get that professional structure, get some more of that high level training partners, high level management throughout through their career, keep them in preparation for the UFC. But as far as bringing guys up from nothing, Tiger Schulman is just doing an excellent job.
They're doing really good, and I think it's been impressive how many guys recently they've been bringing up.
Yeah.
So it's, and Arce's Arce has is actually a pretty good counter wrestler too. Decent ground game. I don't know. My biggest thing is I want to see him in there against someone who is aggressively looking to take him down. But he seems really comfortable moving in all directions. He's not a one-direction kind of fighter. He's very much kind of like that boxer-puncher type. He's content to just stay on the outside and just touch you up and go in whichever direction you want to go. Oh, you want to go forward? Fine, I'll go backwards. You want to go backwards? Fine, I'll push you back. As long as I'm hitting you, I'm happy.
And to speak to the boxer puncher thing, I believe maybe it's just New York Golden Gloves, but it's still a big high-level Golden Gloves title.
Yeah.
Archie won the Golden Gloves championship, like, and did it as a good quality boxer at 145, or like I think it was maybe at 145 for the fight. You can find video on it, and it's, let's see,
Yeah.
141 pound Golden Gloves champ.
Yeah.
So you're not talking about like heavyweight Golden Gloves, because we hear a lot of guys like, oh well, he was like a Colorado Golden Gloves champ at light heavyweight or something. It's like, okay, that really does not hold a lot of meaning to me. But you can see the video of him boxing in there, and this is somebody who, as an amateur boxer, looks like a really competent boxer.
Yes. Yeah, he is a legitimately skilled boxer who is adapting it very, very well to MMA.
So, and that's like I was talking about with the if you actually have a specialty, like you have something that you can really lean on, you'll win a lot of fights. And to add into that he's a great athlete, add in that his wrestling and grappling games are both solid, they're both functional, they're both the kind of things that can keep him stable and winning fights.
Yep.
And this is somebody who could come in and be like on that Cody Garbrandt kind of role. Same kind of skill set, same kind of background. Garbrandt was more of a wrestler in high school, had more of that background, but still come in with a functional counter wrestling and powerful boxing game and make some waves.
Yep. So people, if you're interested, go watch some tape on him. It's out there.
Yeah, he's a good fighter. He's somebody that I think there's no reason not to be really interested in him, and to assume that if he sticks with MMA over the long run, that he will be fighting at a very high level before too much longer. And especially Ring of Combat Tiger Schulman, he's basically guaranteed to be getting into the UFC soon. Like, he's not going to be going anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, he's going to the the two of those things put together, he's definitely got the pipeline to the UFC lined up.
Yeah, so that's somebody that we're looking out for. It's a great high note to close the show on. Thank you for joining me again this week. You can find Tom on Twitter at TP_Grant. You can find me on Twitter at TheZaneSimon. If you're watching this over on YouTube, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to MMANation.com. You can find us both on BloodyElbow.com writing, and all sorts of other video stuff. We're going to have, I don't know if we'll have a lot of event video around Bellator, but we'll have Knuckle Up next week and probably another individual show, and we'll be back for the Prospectus again, I believe. And I'll be doing another Bellator vivisection and all that good stuff. So be sure to stay tuned, and thanks for joining us, everybody.